And we are doing this.
We can do it live.
Yes, okay.
Oh,
Let's not get too crazy. We'll
my
get
bad.
yanked off YouTube real quick. Doing what?
Welcome to Perhaps It's Possible. I'm Sam. This is Rusty. We got a couple interesting ones today. A couple haunted objects. We're going to look at the Tallman bunk bed and the Devil's Rocking Chair. Rusty, would you like to do yours first? I think I've gone first last couple.
Yeah, sure. I could do that. I'm going to be jumping around a little bit just because there are different versions of the story depending on what site you go to, who you talk to, like always. This one actually was featured back in the 80s on Unsolved Mystery. It is apparently so scary that they barely ever air it again in reruns. From everything I've found, it's really hard to find the episode online. But if you go back and look for their like collections of DVDs and shit, you can find it, which is weird that you can't find it online, but you can find it like a physical copy of it. So, okay, so back in like February of '87. Let's put it this way. Up to this point, the family had absolutely no problems with the paranormal, right? Living their nice little life in Wisconsin. Nothing's going on. Nothing weird's out of the ordinary. You got some kids, and they decide, well, you know what? They're looking through a secondhand shop, and they find a bunk bed. Awesome. We got kids. Kids love bunk beds. Let's do this. So February of '87, they bring the bunk bed home. They put it together, and they put it in the basement for a while. When they finally got around to moving it upstairs in May, that's when things took a turn. They didn't stay quite so family-friendly. The first thing that happened was the kids who were apparently, by all reports, really healthy. They would go to school, come home, and not bring the colds, whatever was going around school with them. But they became sick shortly after the bed was brought upstairs. And this just wasn't a one-off thing. It apparently happened quite a bit. Their son, who they've been calling Danny every time they talk to the press, I'm guessing just to keep him anonymous, which I can't blame him because apparently all of the activity focused on him. And if you want to have a normal childhood, having kids know that you're the focus of paranormal activity, it's not the way to have a normal childhood. So anyway, Danny was sleeping in the room next to the room the bunk bed was in. He was sleeping, having a normal night when his clock radio turned on. He said that he could see the indicator moving on its own. So it was switching stations on its own. He obviously told his parents, "Hey, there's something going on," but they didn't believe him. It's a dream. Maybe you were just having a bad night. Something you ate didn't set well on your stomach. So nothing. Nobody thought anything about it.
The usual.
Yeah.
Brushing it off.
Yeah. Whatever. That stuff doesn't happen because they've never had any activity before this. Why would it suddenly start, right? And that would be my first guess. If my son said, "Hey, my radio turned on and was changing stations," I'd be like, "All right, chances are you were sleeping." Because at one point, as an example, he told me he saw a tarantula crawling across his floor. There's no tarantulas around here. So I'm like, yeah, whatever. Okay, you're probably dreaming. What it turned out was he happened to wake up in the middle of the night and happened to see a spider about like that crawling across his floor. And because he was just barely awake.
Right.
It was giant tarantula because he kept telling me, no, it was like this big. And I'm like, dude, there's no spiders that big around here. So it definitely wasn't a tarantula. But, it's that kind of thing. Okay, maybe he just, saw something on TV that sparked his imagination in his sleep. However, his father, Alan, was in the basement painting the walls. He went up for lunch, or was getting ready to go up to have his lunch. He set the paintbrush down on the table. When he came back, he went looking for the brush, couldn't find it. He just happened to look in the paint bucket, and there it was in the paint bucket with the bristles pointing up, which he would have done on his own. That doesn't even make sense, but he's also positive he laid it on the table. The youngest daughter, next thing that happened, the youngest daughter was sleeping in the bed, and she claimed to have seen a red-eyed witch behind her door. Now keep those two facts in mind. A witch with red eyes, because those are going to be a running theme through the rest of this story. She claimed that there was a fire in her room. But of course, the next day, there's no evidence of any fire anywhere. So, the family was like, okay, another bad dream, whatever. Except her brother Danny, a month later, saw the same thing. There was a fire in his room with no evidence of a fire anywhere. The family brought in their pastor, and of course, I hate to discount it, but the first thing the pastor says when he walks in the house is, "I feel an evil presence." And the reason I'm reacting this way is it seems like every time they have somebody come in who's religious, they always seem to be able to sense these evil presences. Like they're all sensitive.
Right.
Which, you're telling me every member of every clergy is sensitive? It kind of makes me wonder if he was just trying to, okay, yep, there's something here. We're going to get rid of it. Don't worry about it.
Right.
But it got, after that, things started to pick up even more. Doors would open and shut with a loud bang, or they would slam open and then creak closed. They would hear voices. They kept seeing weird things that weren't there. A week before Christmas, Danny saw something that scared him so bad that he wanted out of the house. He didn't want to live there anymore. This story that I'm reading here doesn't say what it is, but this is where the father gets frustrated because now his kid wants to leave their home, so he challenges whatever it is that's harassing the family to a fight.
Oh,
just come take me. You think you're big? You're picking on my kids. No, come on. Take on me. I'm an adult, right? Yeah, exactly. 2 a.m. on January 7th, my birthday, 1988, at 3 weeks after he's challenged it, he comes home from a late shift. Alan does. He pulls up outside his garage and he hears this howling sound coming from the inside of his garage. So he steps out of the car and he's looking around. He's approaching the garage and he hears a voice say, "Come here." It's like, kind of like, "Hey, you asked for it. Come here and get it."
Right.
So he went around the back to see if anybody was outside screwing around. Nope. So he goes back to the garage and sees there's a fire in the garage. So he rushes inside, get a fire extinguisher, goes back to the garage. There's no fire at all. No sign of a fire, nothing. The garage door was fine. There was no signs anywhere of any fire in that garage. And he swears he saw it, which is what his two kids had said they see, was a fire, and there was no sign of it. So now he's starting to think, okay, maybe my kids aren't as crazy as I thought they were. So he goes back inside. He's reaching for his lunch pail, and it goes flying across the room. Which, that would be my sign. Okay, that's it. We're done.
Right.
I mean, fires on their own, but So he starts sleeping in his daughter's room because she's terrified. Never mind his son, hey, whatever. But his daughter, he sleeps in her room. And one night when he's in the room with her, he wakes up and starts noticing a fog appearing around where he's at. And then he hears in the fog this voice say, "You're dead."
And that's when I would run the fuck out.
Yeah, that would be, the fires would be bad enough. That to me would be a sign, hey, I'm burning this fucker down. But he's stubborn. He's challenged it to a fight, and I guess he plans to stick it out at this point. I mean, I know what happens, but I don't want to give it away. So his wife, Debbie, calls the pastor again. Apparently she figures the pastor's going to be able to do it. They always do this, and then it always makes things worse. Again, a few days later, Alan's working late, asked a relative to watch over the girls because he couldn't be there. Complete skeptic because the relative doesn't believe any of this is going on. There's a logical explanation for everything. Either. Till she stays in the house. The same red-eyed witch that the kids had been seeing appears and lets out this scream like this person has never heard before. Debbie, who was with her, said, "Okay, that's it. Get the kids. We're gone." They had vowed to actually leave the house forever. 2 weeks later, the Tallmans decide that's it. It's got it, we've never had any problems with the house. They had the bunk beds destroyed. They are plowed under somewhere in a landfill. They refuse to discuss where it is, what landfill, or anything to do with it. That was it. They were done. But once they got rid of the bunk beds, that was the end of the activity. So if you're looking for the episode that this was originally featured on, it was October 26th, 1988, Unsolved Mysteries Ghosts. So I've got more information here on another story. It's a lot of the same stuff, but this one says the pastor actually tried to bless the house, and this is when the activity increased. When he first showed up and said, I see, I feel the evil, that's when he tried to bless the house. And shit went crazy. Then it was shortly after that, apparently his exact words were, "Pick on me, leave my kids alone." And that's exactly what it decided to do. According to this one, the fire in the garage that Alan saw, he could see red eyes looking through the garage door at him before he went to grab the extinguisher.
Interesting.
Yep. And like I said, red eyes has been a theme through the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's either a male creepy figure with red eyes or a long-haired woman, an old woman with long black hair with red eyes, which is the witch. But that was... See, and this also says here that the fog that came up out of the floor that said "you're dead," that turned into flames with green eyes.
Interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, the family member, again, that stayed, saw a figure materialize in the bedroom as he was putting the kids in bed. And that's when he said, "Oh, yeah, okay, maybe there's a little more going on than I've been given credit for." But At one point, a drunk guy. This was before they were able to destroy the beds. A drunk guy showed up with a Bible at their door, and he was insistent that he was going to perform an exorcism. Instead of casting out the devil like he told everybody he was going to do, the police arrested him for drunk driving.
Huh.
So, I mean, hey, at least they could have let him try. Could have saved him some. But there are some additional tales that may or may not be true. These weren't told by the original family. 2 unsolved mysteries, so whether or not they're true. But there's some people have said there was blood oozing from the ceiling, which doesn't go with anything else that's been told.
Yeah.
There's a claim of a hole to hell in the basement, which again doesn't even make sense, because if that were the case, there would have been activity the whole time and not just before.
Right.
Or not just during the time period those beds were there.
Yeah.
And of all things, I cannot make this one up, but apparently somebody did. There is a version of the story where a snowblower cleared the driveway by itself. Yeah, I mean, hey, if I'm going to have a haunting,
I might as well be one
wants to clear my yard. If that's the kind of haunting I get where the ghost is like, you know what, I'm going to clear this driveway for you.
Right.
Have at it.
Go for it.
Yeah.
That's
the type of haunting I could live with.
Go do my laundry while you're doing it.
Right? If you want to make a story seem believable, why a snowblower that clears your driveway?
Right. That's... No.
Yeah. But apparently the night they decided to flee, the sheriff actually met them at the station, sat down and listened to the whole thing that they had to tell. All of this lasted over a period of 9 months. So all this activity from, seeing the radio, the dial on the radio changing, to the fires challenging him to come here, telling him he was dead, and, a full-on screaming apparition. It was all 9 months. Which is a lot of activity to have to deal with in less than a year.
Oh, yeah. Big time. Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But the interest around the house got so crazy that there were actually threats of arson. We're going to save the neighborhood. We're going to burn it to the ground.
Right.
And it got so bad that the sheriff said, okay, I'm going to tell everybody where this house is, so the next person who may buy it doesn't end up burning to death in their sleep because somebody decided to throw a Molotov through the window.
Right.
But here's the thing. The address he released, nobody is actually certain that that's the house.
Interesting.
There's some speculation that he may have done it just to throw people off.
Right.
And to keep that place, obviously people are going to vandalize it, but if you say, here's the other place, and it's kind of a rundown place, hey, whatever.
Right.
But yeah, yeah, that's all over a bunk bed. And nobody's sure where it came from. That's because it was in a secondhand store. Nobody's come forward and claimed that they were the ones that owned it, but they sold it. It's a mystery where it came from, why it was haunted, what was haunting it.
Interesting. The
So if here's a little more information. I don't mean to cut you off,
Oh, no,
but
you're good.
if you're hell bent on finding this one, it's season 1 of Unsolved Mysteries, episode 4. It's also got a story of the Queen Mary, and if you know anything of the Queen Mary, you know it's considered one of, or if not the most haunted ship.
So it's season 1, episode 4.
Yes.
Yes, I'm writing that down so I can find that later.
Yeah,
Or
but here's the thing. And on most everything that has that
Howdy. Well,
has that most any place you can find that episode, that story has been cut.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Yeah, there's a lot of mystery. Where did the bunk bed come from? Why was it cut? It's just it's a lot more questions than answers. And apparently the people that were on Unsolved Mysteries were actors filling in for the family. So it wasn't the family actually doing the interview, it was actors in their place. Which
Right.
again leaves way more questions than answers.
Yeah, that's interesting.
The only thing I could figure is 1, it's all bullshit. Or 2, they just want to live a normal life and have their kids as disassociated with this as possible.
Right.
So that's what they did.
Which, I mean, I can't really blame them for that.
Yeah, exactly. But it's 2 definite possibilities. Do I believe it? Nobody knows where the bunk beds came from or where they went for sure. So it's a hell of a story if it's true. But I can't prove one way or the other. So it's one of those is it possible type things.
Right. Huh. Well, suppose it's my turn then.
It is.
Moving on from a bunk bed to a rocking chair.
Yes.
This is another one from Ed and Lorraine Warren. Anybody that has seen The Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It, will have a little bit of familiarity with the story. At the beginning of the movie, they show a little bit of Ed and Lorraine dealing with the possession of David Glatzel. And that's where the chair comes in. So it was just a simple piece of household furniture. The Glatzel family had bought it in the 1950s, early 1950s. And there was nothing remarkable about this rocking chair until the summer of 1980. In July of 1980, David Glatzel was said to become possessed by a demon. He was claiming that middle of the night he would wake up being visited by, quote, a man with black eyes, a thin face with animal features, jagged teeth, pointed ears, horns, and hooves, end quote. He became very withdrawn and acting very depressed. So his older sister, Debbie, decided to ask her fiance, Arnie Johnson, to come stay with them for a little while in the hopes that it would kind of pull him out of the depression and the withdrawn state he was in. Unfortunately, it did not work. Things only began to get weirder at that point. They started noticing that David would wake up with random scratches and random bruises on him that they could not explain. Arnie was starting to hear noises from the attic that he couldn't explain. At first they thought it was like a mouse or something scratching. But upon investigation, they couldn't figure anything out. There was scratching and knocking and like thumping noises. They had no explanation for it. So David then began to start having these visions while awake. He was saying that he was seeing the beast. And he would see, most often, the beast sitting in this rocking chair. And to support this claim, the family has said that they saw the rocking chair actually rocking back and forth on its own. So it wasn't just the kid saying, "Hey, the devil's in the chair." The family was actually seeing it doing stuff. Out of fear and hoping to deal with this, they called in a priest to bless the house. Unfortunately, that only made things worse, because David's visions, the frequency started increasing. The sounds in the attic were getting louder, and David started to progress or degress, I guess. He went downhill. He started hissing at the family, growling at them, and speaking with multiple voices. I couldn't find anywhere in any of these stories if it was, he was speaking with multiple voices at once, or if, his voice was changing. Most any cinematic thing, you get the multiple voices at one time. I don't know if that's supposedly how it was or not. Around the same time, he also started to quote from the book Paradise Lost. Now, keep in mind, David was only 11 at the time. Most 11-year-olds are not overly familiar with Paradise Lost, let alone familiar enough to start quoting from it. Eventually, the family got so desperate and so terrified that they called in Ed and Lorraine Warren. The Warrens started making regular visits to the family home, bringing priests with them to do blessings and to perform exorcisms. Many of the exorcisms were actually done with David sitting in the rocking chair. After the first instance of the exorcism attempt with David sitting in the chair, the family started noticing that the chair was moving on its own from room to room. They would be in one room looking at it. They'd leave the room, go into another room, and all of a sudden the rocking chair was there. On numerous occasions, with multiple witnesses, the chair levitated on its own. One of these times, David was actually in the chair at the time when it did it. And there were many witnesses from Ed and Lorraine Warren, David's parents, his sister, her fiance Arnie, as well as numerous priests that the Warrens were bringing with them to do the exorcisms. Finally, after one last exorcism, the demon was driven out of David. Unfortunately, it was then put into Arnie. And that's where the movie really picks up, is with Arnie's story, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. It was a fairly famous case in the 80s.
Now, did he actually challenge it to enter him? Or
yeah, I could not find.
Or, okay.
Because
I know in the movie that's what they said.
Mm-hmm.
I wondered that.
Yeah. I was wondering that too. And I was looking, and I could unfortunately not find anything that stated one way or the other. If he had actually challenged it / said, "Hey, leave him, take me instead." Yeah. But knowing people, wouldn't surprise me if that's what happened. So shortly thereafter, Arnie began having these weird visions, slipping into weird trances where he would do things and then not remember them. He started to growl and hiss just like David had been. And that lasted for a few months before finally the famous case happened where he murdered his landlord, Alan Bono, with a pocket knife, stabbing him multiple times while Debbie, his fiance, watched. The cops picked him up a few miles away, wandering down the road. He claimed he had no recollection of what happened. He was covered in blood, and as soon as the cops pulled him over, he was like, I don't know what happened. I'm terrified of what's going on. Why am I covered in blood? So, unfortunately, Alan then passed away shortly after in the hospital, as is, frequently the case after you get stabbed 15 times. Arnie planned to go in to the court and use the first ever account in American history of demonic possession as his reason why he's not guilty. Unfortunately for Arnie, Judge Robert Callahan found him guilty, said there was not enough evidence that he had been possessed at the time. He was sentenced to 10 to 20 years and released after 5, apparently. From what I gathered, he was released for good behavior. Couldn't really find anything that stated why he was released after 5 years. But he was. So, and from what I can find, nothing really happened while he was in prison. Whereas, the movie makes it go a lot more in depth in prison, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
From what I can find, nothing really happened once he was in prison. So a lot of people suspect that whatever the demon was that had possessed him after it made him kill his landlord somehow got thrown back into the chair. So after these horrifying events in 1980, the family put the chair back into storage, where it stayed for many years until they decided to move homes. They took the chair with them. For some reason, decided to pull it out of storage and keep it in their home again. And this chair has stains on the cushion from the holy water and the blessed oils that were used for the exorcisms on David. That alone would be like, I would be like, I'm not having that in my home. Like, that's just a reminder of everything horrible that happened. But they did. And from then on, anybody that would sit in the chair would suddenly have either abnormal back issues or sciatic issues. To the point where one person needed surgery to fix their back issue that they suddenly got after sitting in it. And one close family member supposedly did not believe the legend, so he sat in the chair. And for more than 10 years, he was not able to walk upright. I don't know how accurate that is. I couldn't find anything saying, what family member, how they were connected. Everything just says a close family member. If you're that close, how did you not believe everything that happened?
Well, it's like the Tallman bunks. They had a close family member not believe them until
right
themselves. So
true. Yeah, so the chair is now in a museum called the Haunted Museum, supposedly. I could not find out. The article I was reading, I couldn't figure out where this museum is. It was very vague on it. But the chair is encased in a display with very thick glass so that nobody can inadvertently sit in it or, purposely sit in it, trying to mock whatever's haunting it. And they do have some weird things happen in the room still. When they first brought the chair to the museum, they started having doors randomly shutting and locking themselves. They had lights going on and off. The switches, they could actually watch the switches physically moving back and forth. And the driver that brought the chair from the Gletzel family home to the museum reported having, shortly thereafter, because he accidentally made contact with the chair, started having weird, terrifying dreams and claiming to be seeing a thin-faced man with jagged teeth, pointed ears, and horns. And then from there, it kind of just went into obscurity. From everything I can find, it's still just sitting in this museum. Nothing weird has happened since it got there, other than the occasional, the lights on the room will flicker or something like that. No other deaths that I could find. But yeah, supposedly this rocking chair is possessed by the devil himself, which is interesting. I want to know how that happened. Like, if this demon or devil was possessing David and then went into the chair, how was it still possessing David at the same time? And then possessing Arnie to, commit this murder. So, it's one of those things that, looking at the evidence, we have many witnesses that say they saw the chair levitate on its own. Arnie most certainly, killed this guy. Like, there's no doubt about it. Arnie killed him, whether he was possessed or not. At least his body did, I'll say. Like, his fiance straight up witnessed it happen. And I don't know about you, but I can't say that, hey, I just watched my wife murder this guy, but it didn't actually happen.
I didn't see it.
Right.
I saw it, but didn't see it.
And then to go on, because she ended up marrying Arnie after he was released from prison. She still married him. So clearly, she believed it. I don't know too many people that are like, yeah, my fiance is a psychotic murderer, but I'm still going to marry him. Like, it's just not something that really happens. Hey, Chris, thanks for tuning in.
What gets me is the people that, even if you're skeptical, why risk sitting in the chair?
Right. Like, I don't know. It's one of those things where, like, I kind of get the mentality because I want to go poke the bear. But at the same time, like, better safe than sorry, Well,
you're considering somebody was supposed to have killed somebody else because of this chair. I think
Right.
The last thing I'd want to do is take that risk.
Yeah. I'd rather not go sit in that chair, personally. But, what do I know? Oh, man. It's one of those things that I want to believe it, but I have issues believing it. I think part of the reason I have such a hard time believing in this particular story is because the movie, it once something gets turned into a Hollywood film, I find that it becomes harder and harder to believe. Just because of the embellishments and whatnot they do in the movies. But at the same time, even with the embellishments, at its core, this story, whether there was truly possession or not, something crazy happened. There's some grain of truth to it, whether you believe it was a possession or not. Somehow, this little kid started doing weird shit, stopped, was fine, and then his sister's fiance started doing the same weird shit shortly before murdering a dude. something weird is going on, whether possession or just a very weird psychotic break.
Or a good excuse to off somebody he didn't like.
This is also true. Which is another thing that the movie kind of took a liberty with, because from everything I could find, he didn't mind his landlord. Him and his landlord were kind of friends. Whereas in the movie, it kind of was more of a... They showed a, you know, a friendly, civil relationship that, you know, it was more of a, I put up with you because you're my landlord and I don't want to piss you off and get kicked out of my home.
Yeah.
Whereas from everything I could find, they were actually good friends. The three of them hung out on many occasions. So it's even more interesting that, you know, he went on to end up murdering him.
Well, it's like the Tallman bunk beds. They had no problems until they bought the bunk beds. By all accounts, it was just a normal life. Everybody was happy. Why would they make something like that up?
Right.
If it's for attention, why would they not be on TV on Unsolved Mysteries when they did the story? Why have actors take their place?
Right. And why change the name of your kid?
Yeah.
And if that was the case, if it's just all for attention, why did nothing start happening until you got these random bunk beds in your home?
And then suddenly stopped when I got rid of them. Yeah.
Right. Why wouldn't you make up the story that, you know, stuff's been going on all the time, or stuff continued after you got rid of the bunk beds? Like,
or not try to make a fortune off them by selling them off. Hey, these are haunted.
Right. So yeah, so that definitely lends some credence, at least in my opinion, to the Tallman bunk beds. So why is it called Tallman? Was that their last name?
That was their last name, yeah. Okay. So that's the thing. Is some refer to it just when some people, when they're talking about the case, refer to just the Tallman bunk bed. Some people will refer to the house. When everything I found, it was just the bunk bed that was haunted and not the house. It was apparently nothing has happened in that area since.
That's another interesting thing too about that whole story, because typically speaking, when you have a haunted object, the stories surround, you know, right around that object or the room it's in. But this went well beyond that into the garage.
Yeah.
So that also kind of begs the question of, you know, was it actually the bunk beds? Was something else in the house? Was one of the people actually, you know, being haunted by something? And one of these priests that came in to bless the house or whatever actually did their job correctly and got rid of it. And they just happened to think it, you know, it was around the time they got rid of the bunk beds.
Yeah, that's what makes me wonder, because it was confined to that room and Danny's room next to it, that the hauntings was taking place until the first police or the pastor first came in to bless the house.
Right.
And then it seemed to be able to spread into the garage and beyond.
Right. So when that first priest came in and basically challenged it by trying to get rid of it, did it release it from the bunk bed so that it could then go to wherever it wanted to in the house? Yeah.
But then it also makes me wonder, because I've read and heard accounts where these things feed off fear, and the more fear it gets, the stronger it gets. So was that what was going on?
Right. Which very well could be. I mean, even it could also be something similar to, you know, the Dybbuk box, which we'll get into in another episode. That's going to be a whole episode in and of itself. But just the quick rundown of it, you know, it was this haunted box that nothing really weird was happening until the person would open the box.
Yep.
So it could also be something similar to that, where it started out just the bunk beds until it was freed from the bunk bed, you know?
Yeah.
Who knows? We'll never know, because the bunk beds are apparently in some random landfill somewhere, who knows where.
Yeah. And it's weird that you bring that up, because, again, it was only Danny's room that they were seeing stuff in until his sister slept in the bed. And then, they started seeing things in that room, and then the rest of the house after the pastor showed up.
Yeah. So was it just? Was it like you said? The fear. It more fear that it kind of had, the stronger it got, and the more it was able to interact with the home.
Yeah.
And then challenging it didn't help. That's a dumb idea.
Yep. That always seems to be something everybody does, and then when they do, it seems to focus its full attention on them. Like, okay, you wanted it,
right? And then they always wonder, oh, why? Why is this happening to me? Well, because you're dumb and you challenged the thing to, essentially to a duel.
It just amazes me after the first sighting of fire that they stayed.
Yeah. As soon as, I saw the fire or was even told that, hey, I saw a fire in my room last night, but then there was no evidence, I'd be like, all right, let's get out.
Especially when Danny came forward after his sister did and said, yeah, I'm seeing fire too. Well, we're done.
Right. No, that would be my key. My key to get the fuck out.
Yeah.
Like, nope, I'm done. I'm good.
And Alan saw it twice. He saw it in the garage, and then he saw the fog turn into fire. So.
Right. And that's the weird thing. Like, I'm sorry, but if my kids tell me that there is a haunting in my home, and they're seeing these weird visions, and then they're seeing fire, and then I see a fire, potentially with red eyes in it, I run, grab a fire extinguisher, come back, and there's no fire, no evidence of a fire. You just saw the very thing your kids, plural, were claiming to have seen, and now you're seeing it, and you don't think, hey, maybe something's going on, maybe I should get out of here?
Yeah.
Like, I want to know what was going through his head and why, because personally, when I'm thinking about it, like, if I have kids and I was in that situation, my first thought would be, get them the fuck out to protect them. Yeah. Not, it's all right.
Well, yeah. Well, the first he hears "come here," so he goes around the back. There's nothing. So he goes back to the garage and it's on fire after being told, "Hey, come here." Right. And then he hears a voice say, "You're dead." Yeah. He runs to get the extinguisher, and when he's back, there's no fire. That to me would be a threat that, hey, as soon as I'm strong enough, I'm burning your house to the ground. Mm-hmm. With you in it.
Right. Like, the thing literally just straight up told you, you're dead. Like, that's... Clearly, it's not saying, oh, hey, you're dead, actually, and you just don't know it. No, that's a threat.
And at that point, that was like the third reported fire that they had seen. Mm-hmm. That to me would be like, okay, yeah, this thing's a pyro and wants to burn us all to death.
Right. Which I find really funny that, neighbors were threatening to burn the building down.
Yeah.
I'd be a little afraid that that's just going to fuel the possession or the haunting.
Yeah. The lunchbox shooting out from him, away from his hand.
Yeah, that's also.
This right after that fire would have been okay, this thing is serious. We need to go.
Right. Like, clearly it's not just toying with you. It's after you.
Like, what blows my mind is the final nail in the coffin for these folks was the apparition showing up and screaming at them. Right. That's what broke the camel's back. Not the slamming doors, not the fires, not the fog, not the old woman with red eyes, not the red eyes in the window or the green eyes in the fog. Stuff moving on its own, doors slamming and opening, radios going on and off, changing stations on their own. Oh, no. Whatever, whatever, that's fine. Dude shows up and screams at me, I'm out.
Right. Oh. Yeah.
It was funny as you were telling the story about that rocking chair, because the Netflix screensaver that comes on and shows you what's on Netflix, Conjuring 2 showed up.
It's listening.
It was a little weird.
I also find it a little funny that I think this is like the second time, maybe even third time, that you and I have inadvertently picked things that happened in the same year, around the same time frame, and that is not at all intentional.
No. See, when you mentioned that chair moving, my first thought was, okay, maybe it's near a window. Maybe it's just a breeze. And then you're like, oh, it levitates too. Okay, well, yeah, that's unless that's like a hurricane coming through. That
Right.
yeah,
The wind ain't
that's
doing
not the
that.
wind.
Wind's not going to lift that thing off the ground. But yeah, especially with David
People are sitting in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, with levitating with him in it. Yeah, that's not a breeze.
No, that's something else.
I can't imagine going, oh, this chair did what? Yeah, let me sit in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's like, I don't know, that's just crazy to me. Why would you even risk it? Like, what do you have to gain if nothing happens? You're not going to get famous as the person who sat in the devil's rocking chair and didn't die. You're not going to get famous from that. Nobody's going to give a shit. So there is no upside to sitting in this thing, other than possibly a comfy chair.
That's the thing. I'm the guy that's going to say, you know what? Do I believe it? Even if I don't personally believe it, I'm not going to take that risk. On the off chance that, oh, hey, yeah, this stuff is actually happening.
Right. Yeah.
It's like the day we were on Mig's stream and they were talking about a certain paranormal creature that I still refuse to name. Is it real? I don't know, but I'm not going to tempt it by naming it.
Right. Right. Why take the chances of it being factual?
Yep.
But
I will actually type into the chat what we're talking about so people will know, but I am not by any means going to name it out loud. Because that's part of their folklore. You call it, you're invoking it, it's coming after you, and there's no way in hell I'm doing that.
Right. Eventually we'll have to do an episode on that.
Yeah.
It'll be an interesting one because we probably won't be saying the name of it, so
It's like the other more Canadian, cannibalistic paranormal creature.
Does Canada really have paranormal creatures though? Wouldn't they just be apologizing all the time?
Yes.
Slash you. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to kill you. I just imagine that just like killing somebody like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I apologize to any Canadian viewers. I love you all. You're amazing people.
We got to cover them both at some point.
Yeah.
At least with the Wendigo, it's not as bad because there's specific ways to become a Wendigo.
Right.
And I don't plan to eat another human being, so we're all good.
Why not? I hear we're tasty.
It tastes like pork or chicken, depending on who you ask.
Yeah. I mean, depending on who you ask, pork tastes like chicken, so. What doesn't taste like chicken?
Turkey.
You got me there.
Carrots.
Anyways.
Yeah. Also, at some point, we have to cover the rake.
The rake?
Yeah, the rake. Apparently, this is a paranormal creature that did not exist before the internet.
Interesting.
It apparently was given life through mass power of suggestion.
Similar to a tulpa, then.
Yeah.
Interesting. Which we'll also cover a tulpa at some point.
Yeah.
And any of the viewers, if you guys have any specific things you would like us to cover, feel free to throw it in chat, message the channel, whatever. Any recommendations of things that you would love to hear us cover?
We do have an email, but I can't remember what it is off the top of my head.
Oh,
I think it's possible at Gmail.
Perhaps it's possible at Gmail. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's one of those weird, unexplained things.
It's like, yeah, it's as unexplained as sitting in a chair that could possess you.
Yeah. But It looks like we got about 5 minutes left. You wanna run through the phone number real quick? Those would be your top three. The Wendigo, the Tulpa, and the one that we will not name.
Yeah, the one we won't name. No. Yeah, there is a phone number. If I remember correctly off the top of my head, it's 088, and the rest is all eights. The first person that was issued the phone number died. The second person also died. There was a mob. I think it was a mob boss or somebody connected with the mafia who ended up meeting a pretty horrible death who had owned the number. It's just this whole list of people who all met really nasty deaths, who all were issued this phone number. And it got to the point where the cell phone company that was issuing the number canceled the number. Flat out said, we are not issuing this number anymore, and have since refused to issue the number because everybody who has had it has died in some horrifying way. Not just, okay, I got sick and died, like shot to death, car accidents, dismemberment, crazy ways of dying because of a phone number.
I don't know how that happens. Like, how does a phone number become cursed?
I don't know. I could see it if it were all sixes because of the obvious connection.
Right.
But this is all eights.
Yeah, that's weird. Speaking of sixes.
Unless, of course, you start adding all those eights together.
Maybe. Does that add up?
A lot of sixes if you do it that way.
Yeah, fair enough. But
anyway.
So my new job, we're setting up my new facility. We're trying to figure out a phone number. And the project manager got in hold with the cell phone company, or the phone company we're going through. And they send me a list of available possible numbers. The first list they sent me were all 666 numbers.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, it was the area code and then 666 and then 4 numbers. I'm like,
I'm gonna pass.
I'm like, that's a little weird. Let's stay away from that.
Well, it's like I was explaining in the paranormal chat last night. Not far from here is the mental hospital, and you can see from the road the old abandoned buildings on the property. They're just there. I don't know what's in them. I would love to get in there and poke around because, like I said, it's the old abandoned. It's the mental hospital is still in use, but not these buildings. And it's not that far away. The nursing home here is getting set to shut down, right?
I don't know anymore.
But either way, nursing homes are perfect ground for hauntings. So many deaths. That can be seen on our bedroom window. And it was last night and the night before, it was just her and I watching TV, and we heard it was clear to both of us, somebody running around upstairs. And it was just us. Nobody else around.
Damn.
Yeah. Maybe. But, I mean, how many times have I told you weird shit's happened here?
Oh, yeah.
I've seen what I thought was my wife, and it wasn't her. There was no way she could have gotten in bed that quick without me noticing.
Right.
Yeah.
Crazy world we live in.
Yep. Hey, at least it's not a rocking chair.
It's true.
Or a haunted bunk bed.
Indeed. Makes me weird to sit in rocking chairs now.
Right? Especially after reading the story about the other one.
Yeah.
Which maybe we'll cover someday as just an aside.
Right.
Compare, especially considering the very end of it where it's like, well, it's 100 years after the fact, but okay.
Right. Yeah, we'll touch on that at some point.
Yep.
But yeah, looks like that's it for today.
Yeah. Hopefully we provided some stories to make people think.
I hope so. And we'll be back next week, same time, and covering a couple more interesting. Oh, geez, what are we doing next week? Places, I think, right? On to places.
I think so.
All right, sounds good.
I already know. I'm pretty sure the place I want to do. So.
Oh boy,
Yeah.
I got some work to figure out what I'm gonna do then.
Yep. All right. See everybody later.